Hi, thanks for joining me. So for today's practice, we're going to explore, a few exercises or a few practices that can help support the pelvic floor. And these are also great to help support your core. And if you're experiencing back pain or hip pain, you might find these practices helpful and supportive as well. So as we move through them, I invite you to practice with as much ease and as much effortlessness as possible. Less really is more. So only do what you need to do and nothing more. And so maybe that is your practice. Anyways, we're going to start with a self-massage practice in the abdomen. So I'm going to do it sitting, but I'll invite you to practice it lying down. You can do it sitting if lying down feels uncomfortable for you. So take a moment, make yourself comfortable. And we're going to use our fingers. So I'm going to bring my fingers together like this, and I want you to imagine what it would feel like if a cat was walking across your abdomen. Right? So it has its like little paws and it presses in, and then there's a release, and it presses in and there's a release. So it's really soft and gentle. So we're going to start right in the center in the area of our solar plexus. So if you were to go to your navel and trace straight up to where the ribs come together in the middle, that's where we're going to start. And using your fingers like little cat paws, we're going to take little cat paw steps, tracing down the inside edge of the ribs. So we're just below the rib cage. And breathe softly. And you're tracing down little cat paw steps. And some of these areas it might feel tender, or you might feel that there's a lot of tension. So we're coming down to the top of the hip and then kind of coming down towards the pubic bone. And then we're going to follow that line back up along the side of the waist and the side of the ribs. Just let the breath be really soft and gentle. You don't have to press deeply. And when you come back to center, then we're going to trace down little cat paw walks down the other side of the ribs, down the side of the waist towards the top of the hip, and then coming down at an angle towards the pubic bone or the low belly. And then tracing back up. And if at any point your hands start to fatigue or your arms feel tired, you can take a break and then come back to it again. So we're going to do each side again. Just feeling whatever sensations are present and see if you can give them a name. Tightness, tension, pain, discomfort, smushiness, softness, right? And then after you've done the second round, we'll meet where we started at the beginning, where the ribs come together. And then we're going to cat paw the hands straight down towards the top of the navel. And then when you just at the top of the navel, or the belly button, then we're going to do a little cat paw around the outside of it. So going in a circle. And then when you get back to the top, going the other direction. And then we'll come down the side, and then kind of from the lower bottom side, go on an angle out towards the hip point, and then coming back up, coming around the top of the navel, and then as you come down the other side at the bottom, going out on an angle towards the hip, and then back up. And then release. And wherever you are, breathe softly. And notice your breath. Has the breath changed at all? Has your experience anywhere else in your body shifted or changed? And it may be very subtle. You might not be aware. That's okay. Okay. So I'm not going to go too much more into that. I'm going to leave that for you to explore and play with. Next, we're going to stay on our back. And we're going to move into what I call a knee drop. And this can be a nice alternative to the legs up the wall with the leg rotation that I've done in other videos. So sometimes bringing the legs up the wall is not an option for us. So we can do this one as well or instead. So we're going to start lying on our back with the knees bent and the feet hip distance apart. So just take a moment to settle, feeling the contact points between your feet and the ground. And just coming into the natural rhythm of your breath. And I like to do this with my hands on my pelvis so I can feel the hip creases. And I'll start with the left leg just because that's the leg that you guys are going to see. And I'm going to start by dropping my leg out to the side. And so what you might notice that my left foot rolls onto the outside edge of the foot. I'm not actually moving the position of the foot, it's just moving with the leg. And so that's the movement. And I'm feeling to see if the hip flexor pops up or engages. So if that happens, then I'm just going to make the movement a little bit smaller. So ought not to because we're doing a rotation here. And I'm also noticing what's happening with my pelvis. So if the pelvis has a tendency to roll to the side, that just means that you've gone too far and you've lost the rotation because the pelvis is moving. So let's keep the pelvis in a position where it stays nice and still and find a range that you can move your leg bone without the pelvis wobbling. And then you might also notice what's happening with your other leg. Is there a tendency to kind of counterbalance with the leg that's not moving? And if that's the case, just go a little bit smaller with your leg that's moving. So the idea is we're isolating this leg bone moving in the hip socket and everything else stays nice and quiet, breathing with ease. And we can do maybe 10 of those. And then when you're ready, we'll do the other side. So let me just change the angle. This might be helpful for you guys to see it this way. I'm going to do the right leg this time. So the right leg's coming out to the side and back to center. So if I go too far, you guys see how the left leg and the hips have moved? That's too much. So now I'm just going to come back and go smaller. And if the left leg, like if this is happening with the legs, that's too much again. So keep the left leg quiet and just do the right. And if it feels like the leg's barely moving, awesome. That's a really great awareness to have. And so just work with where you are right now. And then do 5 to 10 of those. And if you want, you can switch back to the first side and explore that again. It might feel different. The experience might be different the second time around. So I'm just going to give you a second to do a couple more on each side. And then when you're done, come back to stillness. And we are going to meet in a tabletop position. So I'm just going to tie my hair back so it gets out of the way. And so we're going to come onto our hands and knees. And so set yourself up so your knees are about hip distance apart, knees directly under the hips, and the wrists are under the shoulders. And if this is too much for your wrists or your shoulders, then you'll just skip this one, okay? So just settle from your shoulders down your arms into your hands, and from your hips down your legs into your knees. Let the belly soften. And just come into a natural rhythm of your breath. And so we're going to move through some cat-cow tilts. But we're going to do it maybe a little bit different from how you've done it in the past. So because we're focusing on pelvic floor, I want us to be able to initiate the movement through our pelvis. So our leg bones are fixed. So it's this idea that the pelvis is moving on the leg bones. So let me grab this guy for a second here. So we're in a tabletop. So let me get a little bit closer here. So here's our pelvis. You're in a tabletop, sacrum, tailbone, sitting bones, hip points. And so, and then our legs, right, are coming down right here. And so we want to find this movement of the pelvis around the leg bones, right? The tilting and the tucking. So let's come back to our tabletop. Here's the pelvis. And we want the pelvis to do this motion around the legs. Tuck, tilt, and tuck. Tilt and tuck. So let's think about it this way. We're going to do this movement. So think of your hip points is moving towards the floor and your tailbone is lifting. I'm not doing anything through my arms or my upper back yet, just the pelvis. And then to reverse, think of your tailbone is moving towards the floor and the pubic bone is moving up towards the belly button. Lifting the tailbone and then dropping the tailbone towards the floor. So we're just going to start by moving that pelvis around the leg bones. And so this just might be your practice today, just finding that movement. And notice if you have a tendency, are you moving through the ribs? Is this happening, right? You can see me moving through the middle of my body, but not a lot of movement happening down here. So can you discern between those 2 points of your body, the difference between the pelvis and the rib cage, right? So we want the movement to come here. And if you need to, lift one hand and feel how your pelvis is moving. Okay, so once you get that, then we can move into the full cat-cow, but initiate at the pelvis. So we're going to tilt the pelvis forward, tailbone lifts, and then move up segment by segment along the spine. So we're going through the low back, sinking down, the mid back sinking down, the upper back sinking down, and then looking forward. And then to reverse, we're going to start at the pelvis. So the tailbone starts to draw down. And then we're going to go segment by segment up the spine. And then the head comes last. And so as you explore this, just breathe naturally. If the breath might naturally flow in one way or another, but you don't need to link movement and breath. And it might feel like certain parts of the spine, it doesn't go segment by segment. It might feel like it's going chunk by chunk. And that just gives us more information about where there is tightness or limitation in the movement. So let's just explore a couple more. Breathing with ease. And if you find that the elbows are bending, right, or if like the legs are moving forward or back, what you can do is just go a little bit smaller, go more shallow with your movement so that the arms stay straight and the legs stay straight, right? Like this would be a really big movement and this would be more of a shallow movement. So pay attention to the elbows, pay attention to whether the legs are shifting back or not. And if there's any pain or discomfort, find a range to move without it, and if you can't, then just consider that that's not the practice for you today. Okay? So from here, I'd like us to come up to standing, and we're going to explore Warrior One at the wall, and I'd like for us if you have it, to use a block, or maybe you could use a pillow or a book. But ideally you want to be able to come to a wall that you can face, and you're going to bring the block between, just, we'll start with the right leg, right? So let me come closer so you can see. We're going to bring the block between the knee and the wall. So you can stand straight up and down and hold the block against the wall. Okay? So I'm in my mountain pose, equally balanced between my feet, close enough that the legs can be straight. And then I'm going to keep holding that block. So this is kind of like a little micro bend. I'm going to take the left leg back. And in doing so, we want to try to keep the pelvis neutral. So if you need to hold on, but without being grippy, you can hold on to the wall. And practice taking that leg, left leg, back without popping a hip up or wobbling too much. So this can be really challenging. So just be really gentle with yourself and try it a few times. Notice what you feel. Okay. So as you can see, I'm not taking a huge step back, and it might be teeny tiny. And then we can bring the heel down and let the front knee bend into the block or the pillar or whatever you're using. And then settle from your hips down your legs into your feet so you feel steady. And then we'll bring the arms up into a cactus arm. So I don't know if you can see me on the video, but my elbows are bent out to the side at about shoulder height. They can be a bit lower if you need them to be. And I'm just going to hold here and breathe. If it's in your practice to twist, you can explore rotating the rib cage to the right, keeping the elbows in line with the shoulders. And the legs and the hips ought not move, so they're fixed. And the ribs move. Okay. And we can bring the arms down. And with that same control that you stepped back with, we're going to step forward. Okay? Stepping forward. And then we can switch sides. So bringing the block to the left leg. Equal balance on both sides. And then finding your step back with the right leg. Bringing the heel down, let the left knee bend. Settle from your hips, down your legs into your feet. And then coming into cactus arms. You can hold here or explore your rotation to the left, keeping the elbows in line with the shoulders. Breathing softly and gently wherever you are. And then you can bring the arms down, and with control, stepping the right foot forward. So I'm going to invite you to practice each side again. Because oftentimes when we do something a second time, we learn a little bit more about our movements, or it might become a little bit easier because we've established a new pattern. Okay? And you might see, like, what happens if you take a big step back? How does the pelvis respond now? Are you like hinging forward? Did you have to do a big hip hike? Is there strain somewhere in your system? Right? And then compare. If I do a small step, do I feel steadier? Do I feel more stable? Is there less pain? Am I more aware of how my pelvis moves less? Or maybe it moves more, right? So just explore. How do the different parts of the body move in comparison to the pelvis, or in comparison to the legs, or in comparison to the ribs? You can do a couple on each side. whole thing with inviting more ease and effortlessness is to move slowly and recognize it doesn't have to be a big movement. Big movements do not equal more or bigger progress. So finish up on the side that you're on, and then we're going to move into one more pose, which is going to be tree pose, which is a balancing pose. So in standing, feeling into the 3 points of the feet, and we're going to start with the right leg rotating out to the side. So we want to turn the thigh out only as far as the pelvis doesn't move. Okay, so try that a couple times. So we're going to rotate it out and then bring the foot down. Now bend your knee so you're on the ball of the foot and slide your heel to ankle. So this may be your mountain pose here. If you feel really steady, maybe you slide your foot onto the inside of your shin. So you can notice, watch my pelvis, watch my hips right here. You can kind of see the line of my shirt comes across where my hip points are. And the leg rotates out, hasn't moved. Bends the knee, hasn't moved. Ankle, heel to ankle, hasn't moved. Sliding foot up the shin, hasn't moved. Now what happens as I come up higher? Now if I want to go higher, see how this line has now changed and my hip is hiking up. So now I don't have this ability to move my leg bone without compensating through my hips. So that's creating a lot of tension and tightness in and around this area that I don't want. So I'm going to come back to the start and reset. I'm only going to go as far as my pelvis stays neutral. And I'm going to breathe here. And then what you do with your arms is up to you. If the shoulders can be relaxed and down, you can let your arms hang. Maybe you want to bring the palms together or even into a cactus arms. If you need to hold on to something for support, just be positioned where you can hold on to a wall or a piece of furniture. And then breathe. You don't want to feel tense or grippy. Like, try this, like tense and squeeze your whole body and notice how your pelvic floor tightens up. And then let that relax and notice how the pelvic floor softens. So if we're in a constant state of stress or bracing ourselves or tensing our body, then our pelvic floor is going to respond in kind. So in a way, we're not going after the pelvic floor directly, but in the act of focusing on different parts of our body, and in this case, the sense of relaxation throughout our whole body, it also impacts the pelvic floor, right? And then to come out, we can turn the knee to center and release. All right, let's try the other side. Just start by exploring, rotating your thigh out to the side. I'm just pivoting on my heel. Bend the knee, slide the heel to ankle. So maybe this is where you stay. Maybe you come up a little bit further. Be in a place where you can balance with ease and breathe with ease. So note, how do I know if I'm in ease or not? Are you holding your breath? Is the breath strained? Is there extraneous tension up top? And if there is, then I would start again or just back up a step. Right? And then taking the arm position of your choice. So with the arms up, that's more load on the system, so check in with your breath. Can you hold the arms up without tensing or bracing? Right? So you choose where you are. Beautiful. All right, and then come back to standing and notice how you feel. All right, so my phone is telling me that it's running out of batteries, so I've got to cut this practice short, but I think I was able to share a few practices that you can explore And invite as much ease and effortlessness into your practice as you can, and notice how that transforms your experience for the rest of the day. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks for joining me. Happy exploring.